Good evening, everyone, and welcome again to our usual Monday program, The Debate. Today, we'll be having quite an interesting topic. We'll be looking at how our cities are developing. We'll be having two panelists today, Lillian and Daniel, who will be coming, and I remain your humble host and moderator, Molifo Elvis. So we'll be having quite an interesting debate, and I want to welcome all those of you who are watching on YouTube, live equally on Facebook. Share our link, like our link, so that we may have so many youths who are following us up, so that together we can make Africa better. While we're waiting to have the second panelist who will be joining us not far from now, I would like to welcome Lillian, who is taking part in our program for her very first time, and I hope that she's going to enjoy her stay with us and equally be a resource person to this program. Lillian, you're welcome to the debate, and we hope that it's going to be a platform that you're going to write home about, and equally invite your friends to join so that together as youths of Africa, of course, we can make things much more better. Remember, we're already sensitizing and informing the youths about the Agenda 2063. You will bear with me that many youths are not even aware of this agenda. So we are making our own, playing our own part already to get this agenda, to make them equally know that there's an agenda like this, and also try already to inform them not to always play the blame role. Lillian, may I have a word from you? You're new on our panel. What do you do? Where do you come from? And what inspired you to join this panel?
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Lilia Mana. I'm from Zambia. I'm an ecologist by profession and recently a sustainability consultant. So sustainability is a topic that's very close to me. It's something that I'm looking to integrate in everything that I touch and bring up in more conversations and have people more involved. So I'm especially glad as an African woman to be on a panel finally that discusses Agenda 2063. So this is going to be informative not only for the audience but for me too. So I hope our audience engages with us and learns a few things today. So this is a little about me. People will learn about me in the next hour. I'm fairly new. This is my first time to the panel, but I've known about this panel a couple months already. I'm an avid follower of Sompon Services.
Thank you so much, Lillian. You're so welcome. Our topic for today is AU Agenda 2063 seeks to have a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainability. Evaluating the growth rate and pattern of African cities, are we developing sustainably? That is what we're going to be basing on today. We're looking at inclusive growth as well as sustainability, a growth that involves everybody, and equally a growth that is environmentally friendly, socially friendly, and economically friendly. And we welcoming equally Daniel. Daniel, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Okay, we are happy to have you on. Kuju is a usual face already on the program, and is always very, prompt to be part of the panel. So Kuju, we are thanking you for always being there, and we are proud to have you. Like I said, today we're looking at evaluating the growth rate and pattern of African cities. Are we developing sustainably? I take Lillian. Lillian surely has connection problems. Okay. I take Daniel. Can you give us an overview of a sustainable city?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Mboli, for that question. There are two words in this statement: sustainable and then city. As we all know, city is settlement, usually in the urban context, where a lot of people settle for business and many other reasons, related reasons. But when we talk of a sustainable city, it's a city in which the ecology or the state of that city, the way it is being preserved for the future generations to enjoy. So even though we are living in a nice and healthy environments with the city like that, how long is that going to be able to stay for other generations? So a sustainable city is one in which the environment, that's social, environmental, and then economic activities are able to last not just for this current generation, but the generations to follow after, and the resources are not depleted. That is a sustainable city.
Okay, thank you so much. You talk of an ecology preserved for future generations to equally benefit from. And I take Lillian, who is so much involved with sustainability and equally city development. Lillian, can we have an overview of a sustainable city? Or an overview of Zambia as a sustainable city?
That's going to be interesting. Well, I think for me, and I like what he mentioned, I'd just like to reiterate that a sustainable city should really encompass sustainability in all its essence. So for me, a sustainable city would be something that's built with social dynamics that support current and future communities and to promote equity, welfare, and prosperity desired by everyone that is there. So currently, what is a sustainable city? What should it encompass? It should guarantee access to everything that is mandated by the Human Rights Charter. So you should have good health, access to health, quality health, access to a healthy environment, and access to good social dynamics. So you need a system that has the economy, environment, and human welfare well integrated together and accessible by everyone that lives there.
Okay,
That
you
is a
talk of
sustainable
equality.
city for me.
All right,
Yeah.
you talk of good, healthy environment, good health equally for the citizens, as well as economic growth. In that case, you're looking at the income of individuals equally, which can make them have a better life. Can you give us an example of an African city today that has grown sustainably, Lillian?
Um, so I really ravaged everything, all my resources to pick one model city for me today. And I think I'd go with Gaborone. I think the Sonas are really trying. The city is really trying to be as sustainable as they can. Of course, it's very early on to see what the trajectory will look like down the road 10, 15 years, but I would say they're headed a good direction. And that's not only because of the green initiatives that they've had, but also when you look at the policies that is guiding city structures, that is guiding community development and all other developmental agencies, you do notice to say, okay, these people are really trying to put up structures that are not for today only, but for future generations. And it's also done in a way that's not very Western to say, yeah. So Gaborone for me. However, I had looked because I don't know if you've heard of the European Green City Awards. So they have these awards every year where they award green cities in Europe. So I thought Africa should have that too. And the only one that came close to that list was Cape Town. But according to me, it fell off because of the social welfare. So I'll go with Gaborone for me.
Okay, so Gabon for you. I don't want to ask.
Gaborone.
Okay, I don't want to ask Daniel that same question. But I wanted to tilt a bit and ask, what are some of the parameters that you may use to know that a city is not developing sustainably? I take Daniel
Okay.
because
Well, there
I
are.
am saying that because Lillian took Gabon instead of Zambia. I thought she was going to take Zambia.
I took Gaborone. I need to reiterate
Okay,
Gaborone, Botswana.
okay,
Yeah,
it's Botswana.
the town in Botswana.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
Botswana.
I thought Gabon.
Yeah.
All right, all right, all right. So, Daniel,
Um,
my question is, what parameters do you use to know that a
we
town or
used
a
to
city is not sustainably developed?
developed. Okay, so I think I just want to agree with what my panelist said, that it's really hard to find an African city as a whole that's, I'll come to my question, but it's really hard to find an African city that's collectively we can say we are headed in a direction of sustainability. Occasionally you come again across pockets of development, people trying to make that effort, but as it stands today, it will be really difficult to point out any single African city that is headed the way of sustainability. So already that's a red light signal for all of Africa. Any city can just pick up the challenge and then decide to head in the sustainable direction. But then to the question you ask about the parameters that we can use to assess whether a city is sustainable, the main let's say the main pillars of sustainability, we have the social, we have the economic, and then we have the environmental. So looking at the social in terms of security, access, and looking at the economic access to resources for everyone, not having large how do I call it, income brackets between people. That's with respect to poverty and all the other things. We are looking at those three main factors: the social factor, the environmental factor, and then the economic. But to delve deeper into that, since I'm an architect, I'll delve a little bit into the environmental aspect, and then two parameters that you can use, the urban design and then the recycling or waste management of a city. So urban design taking into consideration the people. So it's not just about the beautiful and flashy buildings, but then is the city walkable? Is the city safe? Can you walk and cycle within the city without being knocked down by a car? Is the air quality good? Are you able to sit around? Are you able to get water to drink? Like in France, they have water fountains around. So those are the factors under urban design. And then the waste management and recycling too. I know there are cities in Germany that actually pay you for the waste you produce because they are going to use that to recycle and then keep the resources in the system without generating so much waste and without spending so much money on waste management. So the way a city handles its waste and then the way the urban environment and context is designed are just a few examples under the environmental parameter. And of course, the economic and social one, access to funds to do projects can be an example of that, because it shouldn't be only a certain group of people who are able to access, let's say, financial resources to be able to embark on processes for the development of the whole community. Yeah.
Okay, it means when we look at how waste is not being well managed in a city, difficulties in circulations, broken roads, of course, poor
Yeah.
means of communication, poor health facilities, we
Yeah.
begin to think that those cities are not developed sustainably. And we want to
Mm.
remind our viewers who are just joining us that our main topic for today, we're looking at the AU Agenda 2063, which seeks to have a prosperous Africa based on inclusive growth and sustainability. And the question we are basing on is, after evaluating the growth rate and pattern of African cities, are we developing sustainably? And we looked at the 2016 Habitat 3 Summit in Quito, which was aimed to in shaping future urban living. Do you think that African states are actually implementing the resolutions that were brought out in this Habitat 3, that's Habitat 3 Summit in Quito? I take Lillian.
Okay. So I noticed the keto the new urban agenda has got 43 signatories, which is really poor considering the vibe it gave us. It was one of the most notorious agreements of 2016. So it's pretty disappointing that first of all, there's very few countries, and of the 43 countries, there's even fewer African countries there. So directly, it's a no for me. I don't think we are really adhering to the keto agenda for the Habitat 3. So yeah, very few African countries are there. And even those that are trying to get there only tick about, I think they had 7 or 8 main outlines of the new agenda. So we are not really following them because very few African countries promote green spaces and civic participation in our countries. So you have the public green spaces. You see very few of that, considering the political climate. A lot of people are not. A lot of governments are not encouraging public participation in a lot of things. You have renewable energy. It's still a touchy topic for a lot of African countries. That too is missing. You have the percentage of the population who use public transport. That's the one place where we ticked a lot of African countries came up top with a lot of people using public transport. But then you also look at the quality of the public transport and the issues of pollution that result into the energy sources that we're using. So that's also very shaky. The level of air pollution is where we really genuinely come out top. I think at least half the continent has got good air quality. Um, Water consumption also very low with potable water, access to clean water and sanitation. That's SDG 6, I presume. So we're not doing very well as a continent on that. Availability of citywide recycling. How many are you recycling in Cameroon? So it's these personal questions that you ask an average person that should concern you, because you should be able to go on the streets, find bins that tell you, oh, sort your waste or do something as basic as composting. We're not doing that. And composting should be something that's very interesting and important for Africans, considering we rely on agriculture for not only food now, but fiber, which is also our energy source, considering the energy crisis. Then the number of farmer markets, that was also very debatable, because when I looked at what they had and what we typically have, so with three of these points, I feel Africa is actually really doing well. However, there's poor data management, there's poor research, there's poor information rendering. So end up thinking, okay, we're not doing enough. So I think we're getting there. The population, the new school population is really trying to get Africa there. It's trying to get African cities to be green. However, we need to reconcile that energy with policy. The youth today needs to be supported. I think we have an opportunity to change a lot of global movements to our advantage, but they still support missing. So I don't think.
Oh, I lost all my panelists. I'm sure they'll be coming back. We have network problems there. Okay, Daniel is there, and we're looking at the 2016 Habitat 3 Summit in Quito, which was aimed at shaping urban living. Yes, Lillian, you're back?
Yes, I'm back. I'm so sorry. I think one
It's
of the
okay.
measures of sustainability should be internet now. So yeah, we should add that too. How many populations have access to internet?
Good,
Yeah.
good. That is it. Okay, you're saying that we are getting there, but that many cities are not actually, implementing the Quito resolutions. I was tempted to think that if these resolutions were actually, being implemented, we would have had less difficulties handling the COVID-19 pandemic, since we are
Exactly.
looking equally at health facilities and easy ways of movement and communication in town, less pollution and all of that. So, Daniel,
Yeah.
do you think that your country is actually implementing the Quito resolution? Let me take your country, maybe because you cited already a town around that you said was developing sustainably. Are they actually implementing the resolutions that were brought about in the Quito summit?
I would say yes and no at the same time, because most of the efforts, when you even take recycling and all that, are being handled by private institutions and private individuals. When you talk of the collective approach, you hardly find the collective approach. And I would like to take the resolutions from the aspect of inclusion where the people are engaged, and all the developments, in quotes, sustainable developments that we want are not just centered on some idea from out there, but then also come as a result of what the people need and what the people put forward. So I would say in my country, we are doing well as a country, but it's mostly from the private sector and then individuals. But when you look at the collective approach, we are really lacking in that collective national approach where
Mhm.
they take it up as sustainable development up as a key target to follow through with. And then again, the inclusion aspect, I would say it's lacking a lot. It's lacking a lot because we sit in the main cities in Accra and we design schools for all the other regions in the country without going there to even see how their climate or how they even their way of life is even ordered. So I think for the in terms of sustainability and little efforts like energy management and
Mhm.
waste management and all those other minor aspects of the sustainability, we are doing really well as a whole because not because of a collective approach, but because of individuals and private institutions who are pushing that effort. But in terms of inclusion, we are lacking very much in inclusion, even in the private effort sector. So it's something we should really look out for how we can and include people in these decisions. That in turn will help all of us enjoy a sustainable environment and development.
Okay, so you're saying that individuals and equally some private parastatals are doing quite well to make
Yeah.
sure that cities develop. But if this was actually an inclusive effort or a collective effort, like you put it, our cities would develop quite well. We'll be taking a short break with a jingle, but before we get our jingle, I'd like to inform those who are watching us that we are live every Monday on this program, and this is the debate for those youths who are out there and have ideas how we can make Africa better. This is the right place, this is the right avenue for you to make your voice heard and equally to bring forth ideas that can help Africa. We have equally other programs on the Sompon Global TV, which come up Thursday. We have racism. We equally have a book club on Wednesday, and on Sunday, 6 p.m., 7 p.m. German time, I beg your pardon, we have our business talk. We take a short break with a jingle, then we come back, and this time we'll be looking at rural exodus. Thank you so much, the technical decks that are always there to make the program lively and to give us the support that we need. Daniel, you must have learned of recent how most of our African youths are going out of the country to seek for greener pastures. And today we are looking at how our cities are developing, whether they are being developed sustainably. Will you think that we can talk about sustainability or sustainable cities without mentioning rural exodus? And if we must, is developing rural areas going to help curb the urban influx of our youths? Daniel?
All right. Thank you very much. And
Can you come again? I didn't hear the question.
I say we
okay.
cannot talk of cities developing sustainably without equally looking at the aspect of rural exodus. And we want to see if the development of our cities can actually curb the rural influx of our youths. That's moving from rural areas to cities or to different countries in the name of seeking for greener pastures. Can our cities, if well developed, sustainably curb or resolve or solve or handle this issue of immigration?
Okay. Okay. So thank you very much for the question. We cannot talk about sustainable cities or sustainable developments without taking into consideration the numbers and the people. because I think before every settlement or city, new city is created, even with a small housing enclave, they look at the numbers first. We are going to have 100 people using this property. So we are going to make the infrastructure have a capacity of 100 and maybe 120. But then the reason why this conversation or this debate has even come up is because so many people are now moving to the city that the infrastructure that was originally designed to serve a certain number of people is now overburdened with so many extra people. And we know that the obvious cause of this is the rural urban migration that we are talking about. So it's in itself, it has its negative impacts, very negative impacts of putting so much pressure on the city systems and the city infrastructure and the quality of life in the city. But then again, there are also the good aspects where we have availability of labor and all the other additions that come with the migration of people, because now developments in the city can only take place with, let's say, cheaper labor that comes from
Mhm.
elsewhere and not within the
Mhm.
city. So that is the good aspect. So there's the need to develop cities or to rework cities that were even once master planned. In Ghana, we have a city called Tema, and that's a very well planned and master planned city that was planned for settlers. But now you realize that there are so many people there that the systems are not really able to manage the numbers. So it's
Mhm.
not really about, I wouldn't blame the way the city is developed from the start, but then I'll blame effective monitoring, management, and expansion where necessary to hold the people. Because in as much as no city wants to be overburdened with so many people migrating into it, the same city would need these people. Therefore, we need to evaluate our current state, and then if there's the need to expand infrastructure, that is one. So that is where we are today. The people are here. We can't tell them to go back so that we develop their villages or their towns for them. So that is one approach. And then there's the second approach, which is an approach to prevent it from worsening, is to go back to those towns and villages and see what we can also provide there. Is it the schools? Is it the commercial establishments like factories that will require the people in the town to work there? We need to really go back there so that we can let the efforts that have been made in the past and the efforts that have been made in the future
Daniel should have problems with
efforts of
uh,
Yeah,
expansion that
I
are
think
going to be
I'll
made.
just, yeah,
okay, okay.
yeah.
Daniel, continue
Yeah.
your
I,
submission.
is Daniel still here? Oh,
Yeah. So
okay. I was
yeah.
going to jump
So
in
I'm
like
saying
some food.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so
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 I
you're
think I'll
you're
hand over
saying
to
that
you. Yeah.
okay, you're saying that the towns are already populated, and we're looking at whether if we have to go back to these rural areas and develop them. I am happy that you made mention of going back there and sorting out those aspects, whether school, whether health facilities, social facilities that are lacking there, that
Yeah.
make
Yeah.
actually these rural inhabitants, let me put it that way, to live and migrate to town. And you're bearing with me that is because they want to seek better lively support facilities
Yeah.
that they are
Yeah.
moving. And so, do you think actually, let me take Lillian, do you think
Okay.
actually that a proper development of these rural areas can actually curb the influx of our youths and our citizens, our brothers and sisters who are living from the rural areas to towns? Or can,
Yeah,
let me put the question
definitely.
other way, can this be a reason, can this be the reason for their movement because of lack of sustainable development in their cities?
Yeah, definitely. And it's one thing that I wanted to add before we lost Daniel is the growth patterns. I think our cities were not built. Every city should be built with room for growth. Unfortunately, most of our cities were built without expansion, so without room for expansion in the future. So you get to have
Mhm.
cities that get to be overpopulated real quick because there's no space to let later on. Like there's no plan to expand them, and even if there was a plan to expand them, the expansion happened unsustainably. So I do think
Mhm.
rural development is one way to curb overpopulation of our cities. If we did have a strategy and developmental plans to bring to the rural areas what they seek in the cities, which is usually employment
Mhm.
more than anything else, then would have lesser problems with our cities in Africa. But also the expansion plan. Whatever it is, even without migration, we should have thought of populations just growing in the city over time. Lusaka, for example, was built to not house more than 2 million people. I think it had a way lesser population back in time. And now it has at least almost 3 million people. It's 10 times the number of people it was built to hold. So it's beyond capacity. However, yeah, so it's
Mhm.
working at the seams because you have all
Mhm.
these people coming in that are seeking employment, that are seeking better resources, uh, good health, especially. Like the quality of health in these rural areas is deplorable. Quality education, kids have to walk 10 miles in the rural areas to go to school or even more. So it's all these things that is bringing people from rural areas into the cities. So if you do curb the problems rural areas are presenting to the table, which in most times is still the same problems city people have, you do
Mhm.
stand a chance to sustainably develop both areas. And this is why I had initially chosen the Gaborone model because it's really close to Zambia. So you get to see the differences between Zambia and Botswana. You get to see how people live and how social dynamics influence city life
Mhm.
and rural area life. Yeah, of course, it's not a perfect situation there too, but you do get to see, oh, they're trying to take something worth going back to the rural areas for. There's always a reason to go back there. People are not scared to go back to rural areas. It's usually their
Mhm.
holiday destination. While with countries like my own country, you have more people wanting to come to Lusaka. I never live in Lusaka. So I wanted to also mention the SDG 11 talks about sustainable cities and communities. So it's not
Mhm.
just talking about cities, it's talking about communities.
Sure.
So we do, yeah, we do understand, okay, we're going to have a few more amenities in cities than we would have in a village. However, we still want our villages to be properly constructed. We still want our villages to have sustainable habitat. So we are
Mhm.
saying, even in the village, let's make sure people have access to water and sanitation. Let's make sure people have access to quality schools. Let's make sure there's roads they can use because no one is using a donkey anymore to move from point A to B. So you could develop the roads as well. You could, and another interesting thing for me is most of Africa, I have noticed, is fed by rural areas. Like the least developed areas are where our farmlands are. So those
Mhm.
people feed the nation basically, but also
Yeah.
go hungry really fast. So you talk about access to basic things like good roads to promote trade,
Mhm.
access to markets. This is what sustainability is going to do. It's going to increase all of these things and better our livelihood. So yes, whenever you think of what you're doing, you have rural areas, you have cities, develop both places sustainably. Of course, they're going to look different. One is going to be glitzy, it's going to be bigger buildings, but that's not what sustainability is about. Sustainability is just about having dynamics that work in every
Mhm.
community. So you make sure they have access to the things that we've highlighted throughout this debate, which is quality health, quality education,
Mhm.
access to markets for those that are working, employment, and all these things. Ecotourism, that's something that you could look into and help people earn money
Mhm.
all season, all year round, and everything.
Okay. Yeah, you talked of rural areas feeding the urban areas, but get hungry very soon. Sometimes you bear with me that is because they have they have problems getting the food actually to the urban areas, and sometimes the food gets bad in the farms that they are not able to transport,
Exactly.
or they finally have to sell what they have produced so cheap just to meet their basic needs. Thank you so much, Lillian, for that submission. And I have a question here. I want my architect to answer the question, Daniel. You definitely bear with me that most cities are plagued with unregulated plans. That's it, the buildings in the cities are not regulated. There is no town planning, and at the end of the day, we are faced with either government coming back or the council coming back to break homes and all of that. do you think our own architects who are here in Africa can help in the planning of the cities, or we actually do need foreign help for our cities to be well planned?
All right.
That's a challenging question, of course.
That's a very very challenging question, because whenever the issue of foreign aid comes up, a lot of people start to feel they start to feel some pressure. And yeah, if we look take case studies of cities around the world and how they've developed, it's actually cost a lot of billions and millions to develop infrastructure. I don't think it's a joke at all. Drainage systems, utility systems, it
Mhm,
costs so much money to implement. So I think that's a hard question about foreign aid.
mhm,
With respect to the money aspects, I'll say yes, we really do need the money aspect, because as it stands now, Africa has so many needs. Are we going to rather pay for education, or we are going to pay for the environment to be kept clean, that's sanitation, or we are going to invest in infrastructure, or people don't have electricity? What are we going to do first? So I
mhm,
think looking at Africa's current priorities in terms of gender empowerment, education, and the rest, I don't see infrastructure as the with the current government and political leaders. I don't see
mhm.
infrastructure to be a big part of their budgets, not because it's not needful, but because of the high cost involved. So in terms
Yeah.
of money, yes, we will need foreign aid. But then in terms of the what do we call it? The intellect or human resource of the African architects and the African planners, I think we are more and more than able to be able to plan our environments. What we need rather is, it's, should I call it, a continental foreign aid. That is not going outside Africa, but then Africa
Mhm,
looking within. As in African
mhm,
countries collaborating. In Ghana, go to Zambia, go to Zimbabwe, go to Uganda, go to Rwanda, go to even
mhm,
South Africa, because a lot of
mhm.
Africans don't even believe South Africa is part of like Africa because of the
Africa.
way they are so different. Yeah, so we,
Yeah.
we, we really need to collaborate internally within Africa. So that is the collaboration aspect that is needed, because it's no secret that some cities and some towns are gone ahead of others. And
Sure.
by virtue of that, some architects, say in South Africa and planners in South Africa, planners in Botswana, like Lydian said, are doing a good job at so many other places. But then we need that collective efforts where these African experts, architects, and planners are able to come together and sit and share their ideas and look at Africa as a whole. Because Africa indeed is a very powerful force in terms of what we can do with what we have. But then,
Mhm,
aside the money that is needed to implement these things, I think we need to come together, share ideas. There are definitely some always ahead. Come together. So bring
yeah.
all these experts together, we share our ideas, and then we'll move forward. And then I would like to also highlight this thing that it's not always about the money. I don't
Mhm,
know if you know, but
Oh,
Bill Gates has been searching all over for toilet infrastructure and innovation to create the new toilets, because as you know, he did his research and he saw that building a sewage infrastructure costs so much money. So if we have seen the, in quotes, bigger and richer countries looking for such innovations,
mhm,
African experts and planners don't need to look so far. We can
mhm.
actually go to our indigenous settlements and look for various innovations, because Africa is
Mhm.
the land of innovation and we can do it. We have
I
all the
think
experts. Yeah, yeah.
So you
I
say
hope we
you say
have.
we don't need foreign aid, but we need the continental aid. That's aid that will be
Exactly.
generated from African countries. I loved when you
Yeah,
put it that way.
yeah.
Lillian, how do
Yeah.
you think even the diaspora can help to, play a part in this planning issue of our towns? How can the diaspora come in to give a hand?
Yeah, I think the diaspora is at an advantage of having seen how the rest of the world is living right now, how sustainability is being handled there. So you do see that sustainability is becoming more and more of a culture day by day up there than it is in Africa. So I do agree with my co-panelist Daniel when he says it's not just about the money, it's the education, it's the mentality. There's that too. There's that aspect that is missing. There's you know what you're supposed to do, but you still don't do it. So
Don't
there's
do it. Yeah.
there's need for a mental shift here, and I think that's where the diaspora comes. The diaspora needs to almost always look out and send to us, teach us what is happening there, share the knowledge, repatriate best practices from there, and help us do that and follow suit. So I think that's one of the things the diaspora should do. And also, having had that experience, I really do feel there's, because we now know, there's also need for you to bear in mind then re- uh, do the difference. Why was it different before you left your country? How is it different now? Can you bridge in the gap there somehow, bridge in the gap between the knowledge deficits in our families and everything else? We have a saying, and I think it's everywhere in the world, that knowledge begins at home. Good naturedness begins at home. So you always learn something from home. We learn better from our parents. We learn better from our inner circles and the like. So it's very important that you repatriate the knowledge that you have. You repatriate the best practices. You, we are saying there's no more need for original ideas. Tell us what worked there. Let us tweak it here. Support projects that could develop us too. I think that's the onus on the diaspora. It's your responsibility, having seen how different things are and having seen what the future looks like, the near future looks like there, to help Africa get there, to help us get there. So
So thank you.
knowledge, resources, yeah,
So we need the knowledge and equally experience that our diaspora has or have acquired over the years to be able to involve themselves in city planning, because sometimes it's
exactly,
because they are not involved in city plannings, and so we may not have the expertise that they have and the experience. And sometimes
exactly.
equally, the good ideas are copied from foreign countries, and when they want to implement them in our own African setups, they forget to know that there are other challenges that are being faced by the infrastructure that is already in place, and so
Exactly.
they are not implemented how they are actually supposed to be implemented. And that takes me to my question, where I wanted to ask you, what are some of the challenges that Africa today is facing that makes it difficult for them to develop their cities sustainably, Lillian?
Okay. So I think for me, the major challenges has been poverty and hunger in most of these areas. As long as people are hungry today and the poverty levels remain how they are, sustainability is the least of our problems. We're in survival mode as a continent. So as long as we continue, it's almost the same way that we're talking about politics of the belly. As long as we continue to think of what is going to feed us tomorrow, we are not in a capacity to think about how we're going to live tomorrow. And accompanied by that, the major thing that also comes is education, because literacy levels are still plummeting in most African countries. You realize most people do not know far beyond their nose. They do not think beyond their nose. They can't smell anything. They don't imagine anything. So the the quality of education definitely needs to improve, because then people understand to say, oh, this is what happened in Thailand when they didn't do this. This is what will happen to us potentially if we don't do the same thing. I'll talk about something as simple as building around waterways, blocking water paths. We know as scientists, we know to say, oh, if you build over these water resources, this is going to happen. You're going to have trouble accessing water. You're potentially going to have a war on water. However, currently most people that we serve don't understand that. So it's that bringing knowledge closer and closer to the people, capacity building them mentally, and also making sure they have access to resources that will potentially lift them out of poverty and also leave them not hungry anymore. And that's where it's a problem because with sustainability too, you look at natural resources. So you've seen we are not talking green spaces in Africa. I told you one of the main things, the first component of the Quito, the new urban agenda, had the public green spaces. That has been heavily politicized in Africa because most young democracies don't want people gathering anywhere. They think, well, an empowered people is problematic in the long run. We need to change that mentality. We need to get more people to enjoy nature and not use nature for survival. You understand? We have the most beautiful places in the world, and
Mhm.
yet we don't really enjoy them. Like for us, they're just a means to an end. We do not have time to stop and think, oh, let me go to the forest and just enjoy the forest. People are going to the forest to harvest something in the forest, take down the timber in the forest. It's these things you notice that will lead to unsustainability. You see, before now we had forests around cities, but now you have expansion as well. And this also comes to governments as well. They're really not a lot of people, especially I'll give an example of the SADC region. Zambia, Lusaka is the most urbanized city in the SADC region. And what you see every day is we're seeing more trees cut down for road expansion. We're seeing more forests degazated for resettling
Mhm.
and human
Mhm.
settlement. So already you're seeing that's going to be unsustainable because forests are being cut down, meaning the air quality is going to go down. But that's not the only thing, meaning the water quality and the water resources are dying along the way as well. So already you've lost two major components of sustainability. Then you go further and then you're like, okay, so governments also are trying to service their people, but there has to be someone to hold them accountable as well. There has to be proper planning to hold them accountable to say, well, if you cut down trees, can you build around trees? I was in Hamburg the past year, and Hamburg, I worked in Wilhelmsburg, which is a water village. It's the second
Mhm.
biggest water village in the world after Manhattan, and everything is built around that. You know, everything is basically a city on water. No destruction of water paths. There was no such thing because people thought about sustainability.
Yeah.
So it has to be reconciled. When the government is out of line trying to please people, the citizens need to hold them accountable. Checks and balances need to be offered. So I think knowledge and capacity building need to go hand in hand, and people need to get civic participation needs to be encouraged. I think civic
Okay.
participation is really missing. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Leanne. When you look at the Agenda 2063 and we're talking about sustainability, do you think by that year, 2063, our cities would have been all developed in a sustainable way, Lillian? Are you
I really
optimistic?
I want to be optimistic. I am optimistic. However, civic participation, and this is
Mm.
why I'm a very very big fan of the Swamp on Global TV because this is what you're doing. You're trying to educate people about the Agenda 2063 and trying to
Mhm.
take it seriously as we are taking the SDGs, the global SDGs, in a way
Yeah.
that when people learn, it's a call to action. You understand?
Okay.
Left to
Yeah.
our governments alone, that becomes a problem. But as the
Mm.
more people learn, the more our audiences today hear, oh, Agenda 2063. Because when you look at it, the very first pages are all sustainable. Everything is
Mhm.
sustainable oriented going to 2063. However, between now and 2063, I would really love to see more checks and balances. Is the AU being brought? Are they monitoring and evaluating progress as we go? Can we see something in the next 10 years, 20 years
Mhm.
of saying,
Okay.
oh, this is how far we've reached with Agenda 2063. These are the new things that we've incorporated and new problems that will arise because if we continue just taking day by day to Agenda 2063 without monitoring and evaluating our progress, it's going to be problematic. We know with climate
All right.
change, everything is about to change. Yeah. So it'll
Oh,
be
good.
nice
We'll be
to,
coming back. We'll be
yeah,
coming back to climate change. But I wanted to ask Mr. Daniel that as
Yeah,
an architect, when you move around the African countries, surely that you have visited,
yeah.
what are the challenges that you see or observe that can be a hindrance to African cities developing sustainability, given already what is on the ground? What are some of those
Yeah.
challenges that they can face if they want to develop sustainably?
Yeah. Okay. I always say tell I always tell people this, that the same blocks that can be used to build buildings in a slum are the same blocks that are used to build city houses and beautiful houses.
Mm,
So it's
mm.
not really about the blocks that are used, but then about the knowledge gap. Like my fellow panelist Lillian said, so it's about education and then knowledge. Because I look around the African cities I've visited, and I'm just wondering, are these not the same blocks that are used to make the beautiful, well planned cities? It's the same blocks, but then it's just the knowledge gap and then the education that people don't have. That you don't build so close to each other. You don't have to build in the waterway. You don't have to cut down large trees beyond a certain size just to be able to put up your building. All these things come into play. So there's the education aspect and then there's the implementation aspect. Now we wonder that we have city enforcement authorities and all that, but why are they not able to implement all these things? And the simple answer to that is that there's no master plan. There's no master
Okay.
plan for most of these cities and settlements that we have scattered around that are becoming sprawls and slums, and they are not sustainable. So in order for us to even get to that point where we start talking about education and we start talking about enforcement, we need to have our own sustainable master plan where
All right.
even
You
when
say we.
houses are not yet up, we're
Yeah.
able to do layouts that show that these are the right distances. I
Oh,
believe any country within the time that any government comes to power can actually survey a country and tell that these are waterways, these are red zones. There shouldn't be any
mm-hmm.
building there. It shouldn't take long to do with the current technologies we have, drone technologies, and so many other survey technologies that we have. So we
All
should
right.
have a sustainable master plan for
Mm-hmm.
settlements and cities before we can even talk of the education and then the implementation aspects. Yeah.
Okay, Daniel, I take sustainable layout. That's a good
Yeah.
town planning. It means
Yeah.
therefore that we have a poor town planning that
Yeah.
will be as a challenge for us to develop our cities properly. And I wanted to
Yeah.
come again to Lillian. Lillian already, brought up the aspect of climate change, and I wanted to ask Lillian, do you think the way our cities are growing, are we going to be caught up with the effect of climate change, the way our urban towns are growing? Are we going to
Yeah,
be caught in our own
I,
trap?
I, I, I yeah, I think so, and we'll be caught wanting heavily. But before I continue on that, I did want to mention back to financing because I'd forgotten to mention this when you mentioned. I wonder when circular economy is going to enter all our agendas, just from national strategic planning to the African continent as a whole. Like we need to start talking circular economy as a developing continent because half the continent is developing. So you wonder to say where there's so many gaps in all our development projects that are not being covered. How about we look at minimal waste? Let's try to use everything we can build with, building
Mm,
resources. Can we use these to their maximum? Can and
mm,
whatever waste can we regenerate? Whatever waste we generate, can we potentially find something to do with it? Which is what Daniel just said. So I just wanted to mention circular economy and coming back to climate change on the same note. I think Africa is going to be caught wanting because our cities are not climate smart. We are not building resiliently. We have all these skyscrapers that are coming up that are really not climate smart for us at all. And the problems there will be because they're not climate smart buildings, then we are not mitigating or adapting to climate change as is. You know, I had
mm,
written something about resource efficiency, and because I had an opportunity to work with a friend from Mauritania who was looking into resource efficiency and using more local materials to build in Mauritania and seeing, okay, what can we include? It was something as her whole work included mud. Like we
mm,
have dirt everywhere, but that's basically what it is. And she thought, hey, this is a local resource. Could we use it to build? So it's things like that that we are really missing out on when we talk. resource efficiency and climate smart building, we're looking at things that we could use potentially from our own environment that could prepare us for whatever climate change comes throws at us in the future. So as long as we don't do that, we don't learn to adapt our buildings, adapt our infrastructure development to the African needs and not the cosmetic needs of the world, we do have a problem. We need to stop pandering to cosmetic appeal. We need to have an architectural outlook that is purely African and works for Africa.
Okay. Daniel, you have something to add before we take your proposals, suggestions to stakeholders who are involved in developing our cities?
Okay, so I'll just like to say that climate change is something that is happening all over the world. And Africa, we don't have walls in Africa that we can build and wall out Africa from the climate change that is happening. I believe if even if you do not understand the intricacies of what contributes to climate change and makes climate change happen, we can see the effects: change in rainfall patterns, change in temperatures across around you. Even the layman understands that there's something that is changing. So there's the need for us to actually protect what we are enjoying now for future generations. And climate change in itself is a signal that Africa must rise up again and try to make our developments more resilient, like Lillian said, be able to go through this phase of climate change. And I believe climate change, the adverse, is something that we can actually reverse when we go through afforestation, controlling our emissions, and all that through regulation and education and so many other ways that I believe are available for everyone to see. We can actually
Okay.
reverse the negative effects of climate change. Yeah.
Okay, it means that if your cities continue to grow the way they are, we are going to be faced with air pollution, water pollution, and equally drainage problems, which will make us being caught in our own trap, and the result will be global warming, of course, as they say. Lillian, what would be your last word, if at all you had something to tell the AU or stakeholders who are involved in sustainable development of our cities? What would be your last word, your take-home word?
Um, I think my take home word is we need to really revisit our roots and find something culturally significant and attach sustainability to that. We need to find something we need to dig deep within, because now what I see is our history is being erased through the beautiful modern structures that we're embracing day by day. So how about we find an identity, especially for architects? I think Daniel, you and your colleagues need to look into this. We want to see an African identity in architecture. We want to go around our cities and see something that defines us culturally, whatever region it is. We want resource efficiency. We want to see local resources used more often than bringing in, because you see what we don't understand is the more foreign resources we bring in, the more waste we are creating. So how about we just use local resources and see where we go from there? And smart, efficient buildings to help us address climate change would be a great way to go. But most importantly, not only for governments, private institutes, but citizens as well. Can we incentivize sustainability? Can we find cool
Okay.
things to just recognize people that are working in sustainability and encourage more people to come up with it? AKA things like the Green Cities Awards, Green Innovative Awards. I mean, somebody could have found the solution to the toilet, but because it's not really incentivized, it's sitting in someone's backyard right now because nobody cares. So can we celebrate new innovations? Can we celebrate all of these people that are trying to make a change? I think that's my new challenge. I'm trying to get more and more people to understand uh, this is not for future generations. This is for you currently. Improve your life now. Sustainability is for everyone to enjoy.
That's it,
It's not
and
just
that
your
answers the
children.
question of sustainability, that we try to develop our cities while making it environmentally friendly. Daniel, your last word before we conclude.
Okay, quick one. I'd like to say we should embrace technology more because technology is supposed to be help us achieve tasks easier. It's supposed to make work easier. After embracing technology too, let's collect and respect the data. Let's just not
Mhm.
use data as statistics to write reports, but then let's analyze the data and let that advise whatever action we take towards development. And then lastly, to my architects and planners, let's be bold enough to take certain decisions in line with sustainability and sustainable practices. Let's be bold enough to create prototypes. Let's be bold enough to stand our ground in when certain developments are going the way outside of sustainability. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. That's how we had it for this Monday, the debate, and we're looking at how evaluating the growth rate and pattern of African cities. And we're asking the questions: are we developing sustainably? And we said our cities are doing their best, though most of them are not implementing the Quito Summit resolutions that were brought about. And we equally saw that our architects are supposed to put hands on deck, as well as our diaspora, to be able to impact or their influence on what we already have as cities. And we equally saw that the way our cities are growing, we are going to be caught in our own trap with global warming. And we are saying that let our cities use local materials which are environmentally friendly so that we are going to have a city that is sustainable and equally giving chance to future generation to be able to enjoy what we have used today to make the city sustainable. That's how we had it for the debate this Monday. We are inviting all of you to stay tuned to our programs and equally like and share our link so that all youths will gather so that together we can make Africa better. I leave you with our jingle while expecting to have all of you next week for another debate and wishing all those who have passed their exams, their certification exams, congratulations. And equally, we will be having maybe one of these days a program on orientation, how to choose your topics or subjects and universities and professional schools equally. So we are wishing everybody to stay tuned and wait for that program that will be coming up very, very soon on our Some Point Global TV. Bye bye for now.